Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Arbinger's webinar, Inviting the Best in People During Crisis and Uncertainty, Being Influential Leaders to Weather the Storm One Day at a Time. My name is Senthiyl. I'm the Director of Consulting with the Arbinger Institute in Singapore and Malaysia. We have a lot of people attending. We thank you so much for your participation in this webinar. Before we start, just some admin matters. Firstly, if you have technical issues, you can always watch the full webinar live on our YouTube channel, Arbinger Singapore/Malaysia. Your questions are important to us. Please share your questions on the chat box or email us at clientrelations@arbingersea.com. Registered participants will receive the link to the YouTube recording in our follow-up email. We welcome suggestions on future webinar topics from all of you. Do email us. And finally, during the presentation, I will be inviting you to participate in menti.com to share your thoughts and ideas. You may wish to use your mobile phone and go to menti.com now and get ready for it. We will share the code during the presentation. Today's presentation covers 3 areas. Firstly, we will talk about the importance of matching responsibility with our impact. Next, we will introduce a key principle to strengthen influence. Third, we will talk about 3 ways we can strengthen influence. We are in uncharted waters. The unknowns are greater than the knowns. The challenges are threatening. Never before has humanity as a whole faced such a situation. And as a result, the personal impact and consequences are extreme, drastic, and constantly evolving. For some of us, it has been devastating. And as a result, we are affected in a big way. And so too in this period, we affect others. So I'm going to talk about both of these types of effect. One, how we are affected, and the other one is how others are affected by us. Let's start with how we are affected. For this, I would like to invite you to go to menti.com and enter the code over there, 547385, and share 3 ways you are personally affected by the COVID-19 situation. Now, thank you so much for your sharing, and my apologies for showing you the wrong slide for your input. But you can see that people are affected in many ways. Some of them are universal. We are all affected the same ways, but there are other ways that we are uniquely affected. And as leaders, it is so important to understand how people are uniquely affected by this particular situation. Now, let us explore how we potentially affect others. And to understand how we affect others, I would like to introduce a construct. And this is it. Everything we do or have responsibility for has impact and influence on others. The question, therefore, is this: does our responsibility match our influence and impact? And if it doesn't, what are the implications? Let me give you a situation here, right? Think about COVID-19. And in this situation, the stakeholders we impact are far and wide now. Of course, we impact our family and friends. We also impact our customers and colleagues. But in this COVID-19 era, we are also starting to impact businesses as a whole, government and taxpayers, neighbors and community, hospitals and caregivers, and many more stakeholders. So the little things that we do on a daily basis affect others in a big way. Let us examine some of the little things that we do. For example, not washing our hands, not covering our mouth and nose when we are sneezing, not being truthful about my whereabouts for contact tracing purposes, coming to work when not feeling well, not touching things unnecessarily, and many more things. These little things that we do on a daily basis affect others in a big way. So if I come to work or I wake up in the morning and think, this is my responsibility, take care of myself and my needs, a very self-focused way to think about our work, our life. The question then is, what and whom do we impact? Now just think about this. Number one, we could potentially infect others. Number two, we could put others' lives at risk. Number three, we could impact livelihoods. People may lose their jobs in that moment. Number four, healthcare systems could get overloaded. Number five, whole communities could be locked down. Businesses suffer, and we could also have wasted public resources. So you can see, by having a narrow definition of our responsibilities, our influence and impact way exceeds our responsibility. And there are implications. And the main implication is this: when our influence and impact way exceeds responsibility, we can potentially undermine the health and well-being of others and not be accountable for the consequences of our actions. Let me give you some examples. Look at this situation. In Malaysia, there was a person who felt ill. He went to the doctor. He was infected, but nobody knew about it. He had lied about his travel history. And as a result, the entire clinic had to be shut down and disinfected, affecting all the patients that were there, as well as the patients who were going to go to the clinic. Here's another example. In America, in a town called Albany in Georgia, okay, there was a funeral. One of the persons who visited the funeral was infected. As a result, this town had 90,000 people, 600 positive cases, 24 deaths, and the whole region was overloaded with patients. The hospitals were overloaded. In the UK, the UK government decided on going for a strategy of herd immunity. A few days later, they backed off. As a result, the COVID-19 pandemic in UK, the response was delayed, costing more lives. In South Korea, case 31 was responsible for 60% of all infections in South Korea. The impact is huge in this current era. So, never before has the need to match our responsibility with our influence and impact been greater. So how do we do this? How do we invite people to redefine how they see their responsibilities in a way that matches with their influence and impact? And this is where leadership and influence come in. The questions we need to be considering are things like these. How do we invite people to accept, support, and comply with the new social norms and guidelines? How do we invite people to be mindful that we could affect others and put others' lives at risk? How do we invite people to recognize the immense impact our behaviors have on livelihoods, hospitals, and caregivers? And finally, how do we invite people to recognize the immense impact our behaviors have on communities, on businesses, and public spending? Because if we can invite this level of self-awareness and mindfulness, we can invite people to redefine their responsibilities to match their influence. Perhaps like this: take care of myself and my needs in a way that helps others to take care of their needs and concerns as well. So, as leaders, we all have authority. But the question is, what is the quality of our influence? Are people willing to listen to us? After all, people can always find ways to circumvent instructions, rules, and policies. So a good place to start to strengthen influence would be to reflect on our quality of influence in the first place. Questions like these can be very helpful. For example, how are our staff responding to the new challenges and guidelines? Another question, are our family members abiding by the house rules? Another question, are we complying with the new norms and guidelines ourselves? Questions like these can be very helpful in helping us evaluate the strength of our influence in any given situation. So, the leadership challenge is, how do we strengthen the quality of our influence? And here, I would like to share a story. One day after work, I went to fetch my wife from her workplace, and we are now going to a food court near our home for dinner. And on the way to dinner, my wife is sharing what all happened at work. I'm saying, but actually I'm not listening. I'm thinking about my own work. It doesn't take a long to realize that I'm not paying attention. So she pokes me in the rib and say, hey, listening or not? I say, sorry, tell me again. You know what she says? You don't want to listen, Yesterday also same thing. Last week also same thing. Last month also same thing. 10 years of marriage, nothing changed, And we had a quiet journey to the food court. We go to the food court, she goes in one direction, I go in another, we buy our food, come back, sitting together like strangers, eating quietly. We go home, the tension is still brewing. And I'm thinking, I've got a very important presentation tomorrow. I don't need all these problems. I need some peace. So I go to her and say, I'm so sorry, darling. I'll be more careful next time. Do you think she accepted my apology? Of course she didn't. Why? Because she knew I didn't mean it. So here's a very important point. No matter our correct behaviors, people tend to respond. People tend to sense whether we meant it or not. They can tell how we are regarding them. And this is such an important point. No matter what we do, most people are able to just tell whether we meant it or not, how we are regarding them. And therefore, this opens up and suggests a very important principle for influence. And the principle is this: people primarily respond to our mindset, how we regard them, not our behaviors. And this principle is key for influence. Great leaders knew this. And as a result of having a deep conviction for this, they were able to create magic in their respective communities and in their communities and organizations. I would like to invite you to start considering the importance of this principle in guiding and strengthening your own influence. Now, when we talk about how we regard others, I'm going to suggest that there are basically two ways, or two mindsets as we call it in Arbinger. One way is to see and regard others as people, just like me. Now, the other way to regard people is to see them as objects, regard them as objects. Now, if I'm seeing you as an object, I will say I have an inward mindset, or I'm in the box. But if I'm seeing you as a person, I will say I have an outward mindset, or I'm out of the box. And here's the key point. Seeing people as people underpins effective influence. So now, we are now going to go to menti.com again, okay? And we're going to do a word cloud. Let me first get to that page and help you. Kindly share 3 ideas that you believe can help strengthen influence. We have a lot of you who have responded to the menti.com. And here's the thing, the words we see are communication, trust, walk the talk, lead by example, positive words, humility, sincerity, caring, inspiration, and so many other beautiful words. Nearly all of the words that are listed and phrases listed here, they all seem to have something in common. And that something is this: it requires us to see people as people, because without that, these ideas to strengthen influence is simply not possible. Now is this: so where do we start? And I'm going to suggest to you that the first place to start is to look at ourselves. As leaders, we need to first review the way we have defined our responsibilities and match them with our influence and impact. Because if we don't match our responsibility with the influence and impact we have, our influence will falter. Questions like these can help. Am I considering the impact, how I'm regarding others, the impact of how I'm regarding others? Am I considering the impact of the things I say and do? Am I considering the impact of the way I do things, execute things? And finally, am I evaluating the impact of the way I lead? Because if I'm not evaluating the impact of all these things, it's very difficult to actually strengthen my influence. So now, keeping this in mind, I'm now going to share with you 3 ways we can help match our responsibilities with our impact and influence. And the 3 ways are in these categories. Number 1, we need to heighten our self-awareness of how we regard others. Number 2, we need to ensure we understand others. And number 3, ensure people count. Let me start with the first one, heightening self-awareness. So the first idea is influence starts with heightened self-awareness. Okay, so the question is this, right? In order to improve our self-awareness, what do we need to do? And there are two parts here. And the first part is this: I need to check my own readiness to change. Without that, influence will falter. And questions like these can help us evaluate whether we are ready to change or not. Am I prepared to consider that I might be a problem? Am I reflecting and able to discern how I come through to others? Am I reflecting on the quality of my influence and impact? And finally, am I evaluating how people are receiving the messages I communicate? Questions like these are very powerful questions to help us check our own readiness to change, because influence depends on it. The second part of self-awareness is to reflect and discern how we regard people. Are we seeing them as people, or are we seeing them as objects? Questions like these can be very helpful to discern whether we are seeing and treating people or as objects. Example: am I genuinely interested in the needs and concerns of this person? How easy is it for me to listen to this person? How willing am I to consider the merits of the feedback given by this person? Am I prepared to seek help from this person? How easy is it for me to offer help to this person? Do I really care about what this person is trying to achieve? Am I willing to adjust the way I do things to enable this person to achieve his or her objectives? Am I in conflict with this person? Am I being honest in what I say and do? Questions like these are very helpful to help us discern whether we are seeing and regarding others as people. So the first theme of strengthening influence is heightening our own awareness. And there are two parts to it. The first one is to check our own readiness to change. And the second one is to discern whether we are indeed seeing people or as objects. The second idea I have is influence is strengthened when people are understood. So a question like this is worth considering. Are we investing enough time and effort listening and learning from the people around us? We have a simple tool in Arbinger, which we call Meet to Learn. And I would encourage you to consider using this more and more and more. Now, it basically works like this. Set aside some time to meet with people individually and in small groups. Now, the beauty of this exercise is you don't need an hour, 2 hours. It can be as little as 5 minutes. As you're walking to a meeting, waiting for a meeting to start, you can easily do this exercise. Then what you do is this: try to learn as much as you can about this person or this group, including their needs, objectives, worries, challenges, and more. But the key is this: as you're doing this, it's very important to assess. As you're having these conversations, become aware of how interested you are in what this person is saying or trying to say. Check your mindset. What do we mean by that? Here's the interesting thing. It turns out whenever we are outward we are seeing others as people, we are naturally listening and learning in 3 broad areas. We are naturally listening and learning about this person. Who is this person talking? What do I know about them? What do I need to know about them? The second part, we tend to be listening and learning from the person. The person talking becomes our teacher. They could be a 1-year-old, a stranger, a junior. It doesn't matter. When I'm listening to somebody, they become my teacher. What can I learn from them? And the third one, if I'm truly outward and looking at other people as people, I tend to be listening and learning how I could be mistaken. As a result of that conversation, I'm starting to consider, hey, did I make a wrong decision? Was my request unreasonable? Are there changes I need to make? Are there adjustments I need to consider? So if I'm truly outward, if I'm truly seeing others as people, I'm naturally considering and wanting to learn about them, from them, and how I could be mistaken. So these are great ways to assess for ourselves on the fly how we are listening and learning from others. So this is the second idea. So the first idea was heightened self-awareness. The second one is ensure people are understood. And the third idea is influence is strengthened when people know they count. So the question is this: given the dynamic situation we are in, are we considering the stakeholders who are affected and how they are affected. We have a simple tool in Arbinger. We call it Who is Affected. You can do this individually or in groups. I would like to encourage you to do it right now, at least part of it. So let's think about a situation, example like COVID-19, or a decision you need to make. Think of a situation you are in currently, or a decision you need to make. Just take 10 seconds to think of one. I hope you're able to think of a situation or a decision. Now, keeping that situation or decision in mind, identify the people or teams that would potentially be affected by the situation or decision, both in your organization and outside. Again, take about 15 seconds to do that. Okay? Now, among the people you identified, right, you've thought of a lot of stakeholders who are potentially affected. Which people or which groups have you not yet the rest of the steps you can do it offline. The next one is this: brainstorm the potential impact of the situation or decision on these people and groups. After that, consider what new actions we should take relative to the situation. And finally, get feedback. So we've shared with you 3 simple ways we can strengthen the quality of our people count. So to summarize this little presentation, to navigate the challenges we are facing, every individual needs to be at his best. But here's the thing, and to be at people's best, people need to match the way they view their responsibilities with their true impact and influence. Process and rules alone won't cut it. As leaders, influence is key. We can strengthen influence by ensuring we match our own responsibilities with our influence and impact. Now, we have a question that came via email, and I'd like to, talk about it, right? And the question is this, right? How can we keep people connected and engaged while the world around appears to be in chaos? Now, this question came even before the webinar. And if you think about it, in order to be helping people be engaged, what do they need? They need to be seen as people. We need to treat them as people. We need to regard them as people. We need to listen to them. Number 3, we need to understand the impact we have on them. Now, these 3 simple ideas can go a long way in strengthening the engagement of the people around us because they know they count. We value them. And you know what? They tend to respond to our mindset, how we regard them. Okay. Now, with that, we've come to the end of the presentation. Okay. Now, here's the thing. To know more about what we do, please visit us at arbingersca.com. See the programs that we have available both in person and online. Connect with us on LinkedIn and explore our articles. We have a range of rich articles there. Engage with our consultants to deepen conversations, to have deeper conversations. Do share your feedback and your questions. Thank you so much.